Hello! Today we're going to take a flight in the Piper Archer 2 from Carenado in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and the main reason for doing this is I have written up some written documentation for starting the Archer 2 from cold and dark in the simulator, something that the aircraft doesn't come with. So it comes with some basic instructions in the tablet in the aircraft, but there's no real written documentation or pilot operating handbook or anything like that. So I did a bit of a search on the internet and came up with the pilot operating handbook for the aeroplane from 1975, and I've gone through it and I've compared it against what facilities we actually have inside the aeroplane, so we can kind of make the best of what we have and go through the startup procedure somewhat appropriately. So we'll just climb on over the wing here and climb into the cockpit and pull the door shut, and we should be able to just click this to latch, and I think that will latch it up here. No, it won't. So there we go, that latched the door in place. Excellent. So let's center our view up. So I'm going to go through the written startup procedure that I've compiled. I'll put a link to it in the notes of the video as well, and then we'll go for a bit of a fly. Let's just have a look at little nav map to see where we're going to be flying. So we are at Ballina, Byron Gateway Airport, so Yankee Bravo November Alpha in Australia. I have the Orbex scenery for this airport, which improves it somewhat. But I've used the features in Little Nav Map to draw us a pattern or a circuit diagram. So if we right click on the airport, what I've done is add the traffic pattern to Ballina Byron. Okay, so you can see here it goes out to the coast, flies along the coast, turns back in, and then comes back in over the hills and then turn in for finals. So we'll be noting that we're going to turn to follow the coast, then we're going to turn over Lennox Head, and we're going to turn over the hills. So obviously as we come on our base leg, we'll be looking for the runway for our turn-in point, and it'll be down to a visual pattern, so we'll do our best. But the real thing today we're going to be doing is working through the checklist to basically to validate my checklist is correct and to see how we get on with flying the aeroplane. Okay, so first thing we do in the aeroplane is make sure that our controls are configured correctly, and I think they look pretty good to me. So I've got the throttle and the mixture levers configured as well. Make sure my parking brake is on, so I'm just going to go and toggle that to make sure it's on. First things first then, the fuel selector is down near the floor on the left hand side, and we're going to make sure we're using the tank we wish to, so left tank is fine. So then on the pedestal we're going to make sure the carb heat is off, and it is. Then we're going to crack the throttle open by 1/4 of an inch, and then turn the battery on and the alternator on, and turn the fuel pump on. You can hear that whizzing away in the background. Put the mixture to fully rich. Turn the anti-collision lights to on, and then prime the engine as required. We'll just prime it twice. So this is essentially the cold start procedure that we're doing. And then just going to the next page on my notes, I'm just going to take the yoke out of the way to show you this. We're going to turn the ignition key now for the engine, so turn it all the way to the right to start and hold it there. The engine should burst into life, and you want to raise the revs until you get to 1000 RPM. Okay, so then check your oil pressure is in the green. It is. You can turn the fuel pump back off now. And now check your fuel pressure is in the green, and it's looking fine. And then we can reduce the mixture for the moment to lean. So then we can lean over and turn on the Avionics master switch. So you'll see the various instruments come to life around the cockpit. You'll see the GPS coming to life. We can put the transponder to standby. And we're going to initialize the GPS as required. Now we're not going to actually do anything with it today, so we're just waiting for it to boot up. So while we're waiting for that, we can just go and check that we've got amps being generated by the alternator. That's all good. and all the engine needles are looking fine, the RPM is fine, so we're running a little bit fast. We'll just pull the throttle a tiny bit to get it back to 1000 RPM. Okay, so here comes the GPS. So although we're switching it on, we're not actually going to use it because we're going to do this visual pattern just for a bit of fun. Okay, while we're waiting for that, we can also be looking at the comm radios and the nav radios and configure them as required. So you might want to set heading bugs or anything like that, but we're not going to need to today. We're just going to be flying a very basic. In fact, we don't even have a heading bug in this aeroplane. So something we can do though while we're waiting, we're going to calibrate the altimeter. So I've pressed B, it looks like it's already calibrated, that's all fine. We're also going to press D, so this is a directional gyro, not a compass. This is a compass. So this can be configured to point different directions. So you need to make this match the compass. The quick way to do it is press D on the keyboard and it will snap into position. As you make turns, it will drift. So over time you need to periodically check that the directional gyro still matches the compass. Okay, so GPS is up and running now. So let's go and have a look at the next page. So we're going to we're preparing to taxi now, so take the parking brake off and we're going to gently roll forwards and test the toe brakes. And they work fine. So then we can go mixture to rich and taxi out. So let's just go and test the steering as well. We could taxi with lean mixture as well, it won't hurt it, because you might have a lengthy taxi and you don't want to gum up the engine unnecessarily while you're running at low revs. This airfield really is nicely done. We'll have a proper look when we come back in and land. We'll go and depart the runway early and taxi around past the terminal before we come back to the hangars. You can see it over there, it looks really lovely. So we're going to hold short here for a moment because we want to do something else while we're here. So I'll put the parking brake back on. So mixture, we'll go to fully rich. We're going to do a run-up test. Now there's a limits to what you can do in this version of the aeroplane because it's not modelled wonderfully accurately, but we can at least do the transponder, the magneto check. So we're going to run the engine up to 2000 RPM. This is fairly accurately because you're going to be taking a reading from the RPM in a moment. Okay, so engine's running happily at 2000 RPM. We're going to switch the magnetos to use the left magneto, and we're looking for no more than 175 RPM drop. So we have only just got over 100 drop, look, and we'll try the right magneto as well, and that hasn't got any variance. That's all looking good. Whoops. And then we can go back to both, and it should climb back up towards 2000 RPM. So when you're happy with that, you can just pull it back to 1000 RPM again. Okay, so we can taxi out to the runway. We'll leave the engine on rich now because we're going to take off in a few moments' time. Again, if you had a lengthy taxi, you might want to lean it back out during your taxi. So just before we come onto the runway, you can do this either before the runway or when you're lined up. I'm going to go and arrange the lights. So we're going to go and put the landing lights on, the pitot heat on. We're going to put the nav lights on, which you roll this down in this aircraft. We'll also put the fuel pump back on and roll out onto the runway to take off. And again, you would check at this point your controls are free, and you know you've got good. You can actually hear them in this airplane. It's really lovely. runway. So the final thing we're going to do is put the transponder on. And we're basically ready to go. So ease the throttle forwards. You're looking for a minimum of 2300 RPM. And it's going straight through that, so that's all fine. So then just hold the center line. Looking for 55 knots before we rotate. You don't need flaps to take off in a Piper Archer 2. Not on a long runway anyway. For short field you might do. So begin rotating. Don't panic about the nose coming up before the airplane starts to lift. It will eventually. So then you're looking for between 70 and 80 knots. So you can see we accelerated there. So we're going to hold the runway direction of 60 degrees. Bearing in mind we might not be able to see it easily, you know, whether we're tracking left or right. So we're going to hold about 80 knots in the climb out until we get to 1,000 feet. So just keeping an eye on the direction we're going, still running full throttle. 700 feet, 800 feet, so we're starting to lose a little bit of airspeed, so we'll drop the nose to maintain airspeed. And there we go, 1,000 feet, so we can level out and pull the throttle back to 75%. So we are below 3,000 feet, so we'll leave the engine, or the mixture on rich, sorry. And we're now trimming the elevators to stop ourselves from climbing or descending, so you can see we're gently climbing there, so we'll just fix that. We're looking for the coast for that left turn, so we'll begin our left turn. So we're aligning the wing on the marker here for the 10 coordinator. And we're looking to do a 90-degree turn. So you can use the crosshair markers on the directional gyro to judge your turn. So as 60 degrees comes round to 90, we can level out. So we're flying 330 now. Still trimming, we're still accelerating a little bit, which is fine. So we're looking to turn as we come over the top of the town here. If you remember from the circuit diagram or the pattern diagram, we're still a little bit higher than we wanted to be, but we can fix that in the next turn. Okay, so turn again, so align the wing, judge back pressure to keep the nose under control. So again, we're looking for the reciprocal, so we took off on runway 06. So we can wait until 60 degrees is directly behind us on the directional gyro and straighten back up. Then we're managing altitude. See, we dropped a little bit. As we banked, we lost lift more than we had been doing. So we're just correcting for that. Very good. Okay, so now we just maintain the direction we're flying. We've drifted a little bit left there, so we're just correcting for that. A little bit high. So again, we're just, you know, being mindful of speed, altitude, direction. It's not rocket science. It's just being mindful of things. So if we look out sideways, you can see there's the airfield alongside us. So we're looking for the hills over here, which we're flying straight towards. So this is the hill we will fly behind. So you can start to resolve it a little bit more easily. So we'll do our turn to skirt around the back of this hill in order to match the pattern diagram. Again, you can make any pattern up you want. There isn't actually a specified pattern at Berliner as far as I'm aware. I did search for one. So we are just following our own design. So we've drifted a little bit high, so we're just going to come down. So as we make the turn, we're going to start descending as well, or after we've made the turn. So we're just coming up to the hill, It's quite a good visual reference point here that you've got the farm on top of the hill. So we'll begin turning. So again, align the wing on the marker. And again, we're waiting for 60 degrees to come round to the 270 point on the directional gyro. And now we can come off the throttle. And we're going to start descending down, looking for 500 feet. So obviously we're going to get to 500 feet somewhere over here, but you can also see the runways coming. So there's no hurry about doing this, we're just going to drift down towards 500 feet. And keep an eye on where we're going and judge when we want to start turning. So we're going to start turning towards the runway. Yeah, we've overshot slightly. Again, that's just judgment of practice makes perfect. So you're hoping to come out about 500 feet. And obviously, look, we're a little bit high, 100 feet high. So we'll just correct that where we've overshot slightly. And now we're managing speed to come in at the right speed over the runway. So pull the revs all the way back. And we'll bleed speed off on the approach. So we'll go for the first stage of flaps. Of course, the internet connection is playing games with us today as well, which is great fun. So again, you're managing airspeed with the throttle, increasing flaps as you come in. Take no notice of the lights here, they don't seem to be very well aligned to the runway. So cut the throttle. And we're down. Okay. So now we're on the ground, we can turn that landing light off straight away. The flaps can come back up while we're rolling along the runway, and we're looking for the turning point, which is a little way further down the runway. It's not too far. I think it's just beyond the target markers here. Yeah, here we go, look. Just use the toe brakes to slow ourselves down. Obviously we've got a very good turning circle compared to some of the bigger aeroplanes that might be turning around. So we can lean the engine back out to clean up the engine as we come in. We could turn the pitot heat off now, there's no concerns, it's a lovely day. To be honest, you would only turn pitot heat off if you're below 4 degrees centigrade, I believe it is, at the airfield anyway. You know, if you think you have risks during your takeoff or during the startup procedure. So we're just trundling back in. Let's go and have a look at the airfield. So we're taxiing a little bit quickly. Normally you'd be looking for kind of a brisk walking pace for your taxi, but I want to get off the runway because we're backtracking. Right, this is where we get to be nosy. We're actually going to double back on ourselves back out to the taxiways in a moment to get to the storage hangars. I just want to be nosy and come and have a look at the terminals to show you what the scenery is like from Orbex is very good. Let's just get lined up before we start rubbernecking to see what's going on here. So you can see some people making their way out to the Qantas Link aircraft there. It's very cool, isn't it? A few cones on the ground, baggage trolleys. There's lots going on with like helicopters and tankers and tractors on the ground. Okay, so we're going to right turn because we can't get through to where we took off or where we departed from that corner of the airfield. We have to go round. So if you remember, this is where we did our run-up test. Okay, so this is our hangar right here. Obviously in the real world you would stop out on the taxiway and then wheel the aircraft in. I'm just being lazy. Okay, so what do we do first? We want to cut the engine, so we do that by pulling the mixture, which means that any fuel that's left gets used up. Then we can turn the magnetos off, and then we can go and turn the anti-collision lights off. We left the fuel pump on while we were flying. That was a bit naughty really. We should have turned that off during the circuit. Turn the alternator off, turn the master switch for the avionics off, turn the transponder back off. That should have come off as well. I'm doing things a little bit out of order here. Turn the nav lights back off and then turn the battery off. So the order for shutting down isn't so important. It's just about making sure you've done everything. But yeah, I guess the one thing I did drop the ball on there, which is just talking and doing and explaining is quite difficult to do all at once, is I left the fuel pump on while we were flying around. That really should have come back off after the climb. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. So that's flying fairly accurately the Carenado Piper Archer II, or Cherokee as it's also known. So the PA28 family of aircraft, there's lots and lots of them. So this is the Piper Archer II from Carenado. So if you would like to have a copy of the notes that I've written up, they are in the description of the video. Okay, see you again soon.